the little person.
I didn't quite get that. Could you just reread that? Would you mind?
President Obama is a raggedy black supremacist president, and his cowardly enablers would rather kill everybody than stop killing white people. Do you think a person, yes or no, who says that should be appointed to the FCC?
I would need to know more of the context, honestly.
Okay. Well, I think clearly a person who said that should not be appointed to the FCC. Okay. And in fact, you retweeted the exact same thing, only with President Trump instead of President.
America loves a good myth, polished, camera-ready, scored like prestige TV. And for 15 years, one myth has towered over American politics, the legend of Barack Obama. Tonight, that myth met a sledgehammer. JD Vance didn't show up with vague talking points or recycled conspiracy bait. He showed up with a cold read on reality, a simple dare to the audience. Stop grading the movie trailer and look at the actual film. The core news
far left really responds to is power. The thing that they're actually going to be responsive to is the recognition that there are consequences on the other side. If they get off scot-free, if they're never investigated, if they're never prosecuted when they violated the law, then they're just going to come back and do the...
Vance is publicly challenging Obama's legacy on policy, on power, on the story Obama still sells. And he's doing it while calling for full transparency and consequences from institutions that once preferred a wink and a shrug. That's the headline. Now let's open it up. Here's why this matters right now. The political class is running on fumes of nostalgia. We're told to remember the cadence, the cool, the easy smile, because the present feels hard.
But for 20 years, you had Obama and George W. Bush's Department of Justice go easy on this guy. They didn't fully investigate the case. They didn't show any curiosity about the case. And now Donald J. Trump is asking his Department of Justice to show full transparency. And somehow that's a criticism of Donald J. Trump and not Barack Obama.
Harder and more expensive. Meanwhile, the same institutions that told you to hush up and trust the process keep asking for your trust with nothing but vibes as collateral. Vance is stepping into that gap and saying, if there's one rule the modern left responds to, it's power, consequences for rules they expected would never apply to them. You don't have to love the messenger to feel the nerve he just pressed. Here's where we're going in the next few minutes. First, we're going to test the shiny brand against the receipts, what was promised versus what landed in your mailbox and your paycheck. Second, we'll hit the hardest nerve, the great unifier claim, and why the country walked away feeling more fractured.
Big tech companies that were censoring conservatives, they've got to know that's not going to be allowed, and there are going to be consequences for it. The banks, the president is really preoccupied with this, and rightfully so. And of course, you've got to pay the lawfare back in kind. You've got to say to the Comeys and the Brennans of the world, of course, you got to follow the law. You can only prosecute people when they actually broke the law, but we know that a lot of people broke the law in the last administration, and they've got to face real justice, not just words, not just getting hauled before a committee in Capitol Hill. If people broke the law, they have to actually be prosecuted for it, because I think that if they do that, if they know that the consequence for breaking the law is go to jail, then the next generation of Democrats, they're not going to try the same thing.
Pictured, not less. Then we'll trace the machinery, the censorship fights, the lawfare boomerang, the DOJ look away habit under prior administrations contrasted with calls for transparency now. And we'll end with the part nobody wants to say out loud. A legacy that needs a permanent foil isn't a legacy. It's a marketing plan in search of a villain. If that ruffles feathers, good. That means we're close to something true. Click confirmed. Yes, you're in the right place. Public sentiment on the table. People are tired of being lectured by the same leaders who built the maze. Contrarian twist. Vance isn't swatting at the usual decoys. He's going after the prestige aura itself. Quick proof. He keeps dragging the conversation back to outcomes. Costs up, trust down, institutions treating accountability like a seasonal trend. Roadmap. Let's open the ledger. Let's start with the second best point because it sets the stage for everything else. Brand versus outcomes. Obama built a world-class brand. The careful pauses, the moral framing, the promise of a healing arc. The brand said transformation. The bill said otherwise. The Affordable Care Act was sold as the watershed. The reality for many families was higher premiums, narrower networks, and hospitals consolidating power as if efficiency were a kindness. The brand said reset the world's respect. The reality was more drone warfare, a hotter Middle East, and an establishment comfort with technocratic distance, policy from 30,000 feet, shrugged off at ground level by people who had to live under it. The brand said, "Working class defender." The reality featured the largest Wall Street lifeline in modern memory, followed by a glide path into speaker fees, streaming deals, and donor salons. You can hear the rejoinder now, that's complicated. And it is. But the shorthand Vance offers bites because it's simple. If the parcel is always empty at delivery, it doesn't matter how pretty the wrapping was at checkout. Application right now? Voters are allergic to being scolded for noticing. They're told to remember the hope poster, not the foreclosure notices. They're told to remember the playlists, not the stagnant wages. They're told to admire the cool, not ask why the thermostat is still expensive. And when they do ask, they're framed as malcontents, cynics, or worse. Vance flips that. Maybe the cynicism isn't the disease, it's the immune system waking up. Frame it bigger. This is expectations versus reality in its purest form. Expectation. Eloquence equals competence. Charisma equals courage. Symbolism equals transformation. Reality. Eloquence is stagecraft unless it translates into bills you can pay, streets that feel safe, and institutions that don't reserve impunity for their friends. When you prize image over consequence long enough, you produce a country that looks emotionally satisfied for 20 minutes on a Thursday night and fiscally disappointed on Friday morning when the rent's due. Now the strongest point, the one that makes people shift in their chair. The unifier. Remember the promise. No red America, no blue America. A bomb, a bridge, a reset. Look up after 8 years and tell the truth. Partisan trench lines deeper, institutional trust thinner, culture wars metastasized into every advertisement and every algorithm. Even the way we talk to each other is filtered through suspicion. Vance doesn't scream this. He dissects it. He says the speeches didn't mend the cracks. They spackled them just long enough for the next fracture. And when the glamour wore thin, what sat underneath was a governing style that avoided real risk. Keep the posture, keep the brand, keep the narrative tidy. Even if the social fabric frayed out of frame, context vivid. Imagine America as a family with a charismatic parent who always knows the right words at the dinner table, always has the tone exactly right, and then slips away before the dishes are done. The kids go to bed full of big feelings and wake up to a sink still piled high. That's the ache people remember even when they can't name it. That's why a cool dad bit on late-night TV landed then and rings hollow now. A real mentor rolls up sleeves. A brand manager books a podcast application. In the vacuum between rhetoric and relief, resentment grows. Not the performative kind, real, quiet, grinding disappointment. It's what makes people say, "I'm tired of being told what to think, where to sit, what I'm allowed to read, and who I'm allowed to vote for without being called names." It's what makes the censorship fight more than a content moderation debate. It becomes a dignity debate. Vance's line is blunt. If big tech can throttle speech it dislikes with no consequences, it will. If officials can wage lawfare and then retire into cable green rooms without ever answering for the rules they bent, they will. If the message to one side is sit down and take it, the message back eventually becomes stand up and make it costly. Framing. Power respects power. Accountability isn't mean. It's medicine. And the reason it sounds extreme to parts of the establishment is because no one ever expected to have to swallow it. Let's talk about the Department of Justice thread that set comment sections on fire. For years, under both parties,